Came from St. Anne's Parish in Wilmington, went to St. Anne's, went to the seminary after the 8th grade, which back in those days was a thing to do. 4 of my classmates went to the seminary in St. Charles in Baltimore, had a great time down there, like Hogan's Heroes, enjoyed it. I grew up in a Catholic family, very involved in the church. The priests there were very involved, and in those days, recruiting people for the seminary was the big focus. And I particularly remember one priest, Father Francis Tierney, who just died. In fact, I just buried him. He left the priesthood. But he came and gave a talk, and he had his National Guard uniform on. And I didn't know what priests did. I knew they said Mass, Stations of the Cross, and Benediction. Other than that, I had no idea. Well, he came with his National Guard uniform on, and at that point I realized priests do a lot of different things. And in those days, the priests were assigned downstate to sort of season them. Well, I went over, Bishop Hall said, Father Gerres, you're going to Fairfax. And I thought Fairfax, Virginia. Well, Fairfax is here right outside the door, St. Mary Magdalene. So this was my first assignment. I started here in 1966. With Father Miller, had 5 wonderful years. Went to St. Matthew's a year and a half, went to Resurrection, was a pastor there, St. John the Beloved, 12 years, Corpus Christi a year. Immaculate Heart of Mary, I was there when they were building the church, which was exciting. St. Thomas for 12 years, then I retired at the age of 70. We can retire at 70.
I was born in South Philadelphia, and we lived there until 1952. And I was born in 41, so we moved down to Delaware. My father worked for DuPont, and he had commuted for 17 years, but then they moved the engineering department from downtown Wilmington to Levier's in Newark, and we had to move. So we moved to Ellesmere, and I was at Corpus Christi Parish, and went to public schools. My father was not Catholic, so and we went to the school that he went to in Philadelphia, and then Corpus Christi had just opened their school, but they didn't have my grade at that point. They were going a grade at a time. And so I went to Oak Grove and Conrad High School. In my yearbook I have, what are you going to do? Because we did that in the 12th grade, at the beginning of the 12th grade. And I said, follow my father's footsteps as an engineer. And I went to a retreat or a mission that Father McCoy was giving at Corpus Christi. And that's where the idea of priesthood came into my head. So I went to confession to him, and I said I might be interested in the priesthood, and he told me to get in touch with the pastor. And then he got me in touch with Msgr Taggart and got me in touch with the vocation office, and here we are 51 years later. I was 4 years at St. Matthew's, and then Msgr Taggart called me in and said, we would like you to go to Immaculate Heart. And that was, you know when you were ordained that you're going to be transferred, but it's not real until the hammer falls onto the wood, and all of a sudden, he said, we'd like you to go, and I was in love with St. Matthew's and the people and everything. So I, of course, said yes. We didn't have too much of a choice in those days. And so I was up there, and then Father Richardson came to join us too, so we were all back together again for a couple of years up at Immaculate Heart. Holy Rosary with Father Russell and as the pastor, and he usually had newly ordained, so I was 9 years ordained at the time, so I was the old man of the people that he has as associates, because I think he was 10 years ordained when he was made pastor of Holy Rosary. And then I was down in Milford as pastor, Milford and Harrington, St. John's in Milford and St. Bernadette's in Harrington for 5 years. And at that time we were on 10-year terms, and Bishop Mulvey had just come into the diocese, and he asked me if I would go to Salisbury. So down I went to Salisbury in Maryland, and spent 12 years there, to St. Elizabeth Ann Seton for 7.5 years. And I expected to be here for the 12 years and then retire, or 13 years and retire. And in the middle of the 7.5 years, Bishop Saltarelli asked me to go to John the Beloved. And I had said somewhere along the line, whatever the bishop wants me to do, I'll do, and I guess he heard that.
I was born in 1944 in Camden, New Jersey. Went to school in Gloucester, New Jersey, St. Mary's grade school, and my family moved to Delaware County, Pennsylvania. I was in 7th grade. went to St. Joseph's Parish in Aston. After graduating from grade school, went to St. James High School in Chester for 4 years. I have two sisters younger than me. The family was very devout. My father was very involved in the local parish. I started serving Mass in second grade. I can still recite the Latin that I learned then. So it was very much a part of our life. And then when we moved to Aston, again, with the school and the CYO, we were very involved in the parish, even though I was attending high school 4 miles away. I first thought about being a priest in second grade, and then it changed at different times in my life. There was a priest in our parish who taught at St. James. I didn't have him for a teacher, but he was the moderator of our CYO, and I really admired him. He was like a hero, and I really wanted to be like him. Of course, I'm not anything like him, but at least he was the one that I feel was an inspiration to me to consider priesthood. Well, my first assignment was at St. John's Holy Angels, and I got there late because a week after I was ordained, I had to have my back operated on, and it took a while to recover, so I didn't get there till the early fall. And it was a huge parish, and just a lot of things going on, but there were 4 priests assigned there, and it wasn't too long before they realized 4 priests was too many in the parish, and they moved me to Easton, Maryland. So my first assignment was only about a year long, and I spent almost 4 years in St. Peter and Paul in Easton with the big parish and the 2 missions and the school there. That was a great place to be. I really fell in love with it. From Easton, I went to St. Mark's High School. I was the first chaplain there, and I spent 5 years there. And after that, I was sent to a place called Pocomoke City, at the other end of the diocese. And I did not know that part of the diocese, and it took me about a day to fall in love with the area. And I've basically stayed on the Lower Eastern Shore for 30-some years. And what I find interesting, because after leaving Pocomoke, I spent 8 years as a full-time prison chaplain. And then I came here to St. Francis and served here for 16 years. And I retired here almost 4 years ago, and I still live in the parish.
Well, I can't think of another profession where you were involved in so many different things. As I say, I thought a priest just said Mass, benediction, Stations of the Cross. But you know, my career, I was the chaplain down at Gander Hill Prison for 25 years. So that got me into the whole prison system. National Guard, the Army for 25 years. Chaplain to colleges. Involved in building, St. John the Beloved, a lot of building projects there. Immaculate Heart of Mary, the new church there. So there's an awful lot. I enjoyed administration, and quite frankly, I enjoyed raising money. You know, because it wasn't for me. And as I look back, some of the wonderful things that happened, and the fact of the matter is, you know, you need money to do things. And people have been overwhelmingly generous.
Being with people preparing for marriage, baptisms, times of joy, and even being available and being present when people are suffering and in the hospital or death. That I think the presence of the priest is very important.
The state of Maryland built a huge state prison in the parish when I was in Pocomoke in 1987. And it was when it opened, and it still is, the 8th largest prison in the United States. And I started doing services there and saw the need for a priest there full time. And after a few years, the diocese was looking for someone, and they asked if I was interested. I first said no, but then I went on a vacation with my parents out west, and we were driving through the desert, and I seemed to get a message. I think I had one of those desert experiences. I spent 8 years there full time until the priest shortage in the diocese, they just weren't able to keep someone there. So I came here, and I still go 2 days a week. I'll be doing masses there today and tomorrow.
Back in those days while it was the Korean War, and I lived with Father Owen Mullen, and he was a chaplain in the National Guard. So he asked me if I'd have any interest in the Army, and I have this philosophy, the 3 Ds, don't die dumb. And he was telling me about it, so I applied, the bishop released me, the military ordinariate, approved me. I spent 25 wonderful years in the National Guard.
When I was at St. Francis de Sales, we added a building, or a religious education hall type building at Holy Redeemer at the Mission, and that was the first time that I actually did anything that type of thing, and we renovated the hall in the basement of the church. Here we put on the education building, and at John the Beloved we had another building. But those are physical things. I first got involved in the ecumenical movement when I was first ordained, because that was something relatively new, and so I've always been involved in ministeriums with the Protestant clergy. And when I was first ordained, I got involved with the Richardson Park Community Action Program, and ever since then, I've always had a social justice and a social sensitivity to the needs of people. And Bishop Mulvey had asked me to come with him to a meeting in Easton, because the Episcopal Bishop of Easton was gathering the judicatory heads to talk about housing on the Eastern Shore. We've constructed several developments over that period of time. It's been 29 years now, and we've done a lot, to assist in that whole area.
I know some priests that would never set foot in a correctional facility. It's a stretch for me to go to nursing homes. I think part of it is I'm more of a listener than a talker. You go to nursing homes, you have to talk a lot. You go to prison, you just listen. But they're people, and they're forgotten people, and it is one of the works of mercy that rarely gets mentioned. And look at my life, I could have easily, because of a wrong turn here or there, being there myself. So one situation I remember at Mass, because the inmates offer prayers, and this was a number of years ago, and an inmate prayed that his mother would get off drugs. And I thought, boy, where are some of these people coming from? I never had to worry about my mother being on drugs. And things like that just really affect me, and I say, well, I need to keep going there. I was unofficially a drag strip chaplain. I grew up in high school being involved with drag racing, and when I got in the seminary, I would go to the races in the summer, and in order to save money, I started writing a column for a newspaper, so I would get free passes, and met a lot of people that way. So for about 7-8 years, until I was ordained, I was very active, and I still am in touch with a lot of people from that.
But they call me the Uber priest, and there's about 10 different parishes that I help out with masses. And so I'll walk in and people think that's my last name, the Uber priest. So I'll usually it's an email from the secretaries, and I go around, and since I grew up in Wilmington, all my parishes were in Wilmington, I know the people, and it's the greatest joy I have. I love that. Funerals, help out with funerals, baptisms, not many weddings because they're usually planned a year in advance, and I'm not sure where I'm going to be a year from now. So anyway, I do everything except administration, and I love it.
I've helped out in various parts of the diocese, but basically I'm here on the weekends. And if there's an absolute need, Father Roger will do all 4 masses himself, and then I'm available to help out elsewhere. And I help out at St. Margaret of Scotland, and I help out at Holy Angels also on somewhat a regular basis. And we have a couple of priests that are still working that are in their mid-80s. There's 19 that can retire that are over 70. That will be over 70 by 2021. But there's 9 or 10 that can retire tomorrow that they're over 70 right now. And there's 3 that are turning 70 this year. So we're in a dire strait as far as clergy are concerned, except that the retired clergy are very generous with their time. and they're helping out. Most of them are able to help out and are helping out in parishes.
Retirement is very busy. I don't want to say I'm busier now because I was busy before retirement, but I've become an Uber priest. Just this weekend, I celebrated 5 masses in 5 different churches, and not here. It's nice to go into a parish and be able to smile and not have to make decisions about roofs and boilers and those things. One of the things I've thought about is, you know, if I had a chance to do it over again, would I be drawn to the seminary? And I have a feeling I would. Now, as opposed to back in 1962, there are many more ways to minister, the diaconate and different lay ministries in parishes, but I would do it again. I'm not sure I've always done the best job, but I've hung in there, and I think it's important to do that. I would encourage people to realize that it's a good way of life. You know, you bring whatever talents and abilities and shortcomings that you have to it, and it's always good to see God working through the human. Regrets, I've had a few, but none to really mention. Yes.